man. You cannot marry a woman without gills. You're from two different worlds. Oh, I've wasted my life.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and as many of you have noticed, the comic book back issue market has gone a little off kilter. We're even seeing new comics. I believe Something Is Killed in the Children #1 might be selling for $1,000 right now. And there's an enormous amount of fluctuation and volatility in the comic book collecting market. So I decided I would bring some of the experts on here to the channel to talk about what the hell's going on, how you can protect yourselves, and maybe if there's an area or two to exploit to your own benefit. Here with me first up is the man behind Fantastic Comics in Berkeley, California. Heel Yule, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on. Back issues are booming.
Absolutely. Next up, we've got the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado, the man that has a very desirable man cave with lots of nice, pristine back issue comics. How you doing, Doc?
Stop talking about my man cave on TV.
Right.
I'm great, dude. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, he is the curmudgeon of critical, but if you get him talk about comic book collecting, he's not nearly as salty. He gets a lot more excited. How you doing, Pele?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on this today to talk about something that's, to me, very important. To other people, maybe not, but I get excited about this shit. So,
well, I have a lot of viewers that are eyeing the back issue market currently. Maybe they're not completely satisfied with the current state of comics, and they need to know what's going on to protect themselves and find places to invest their money and go and find some of these stories. Now, Pele's going to get into some of his thoughts. Yule, as a comic shop owner, are you seeing this volatility? Are you experiencing it? How are you dealing with it?
Oh, yeah, I definitely am. Having a smaller store, I can only allow so many people in at one time, but I have some people that are coming in regularly to buy back issues. So much to the point where I actually had to get an online store going so that I could put all the stuff I can't even have in my store out there so that other people can find it too.
That's crazy. Doc, I know you are a collector yourself. You have a very nice, full, almost complete collection of X-Men, and you also look for other very desirable keys. What are you seeing in the market? Is it hard to go into and know exactly what you should be buying?
I don't know if it's hard to know what you should be buying, but I think it's definitely right now a little hard to know what you should be paying. You know, the market it's been insane for probably going on 2 years now, but I don't think a lot of people really recognized it. I think for a lot of the time it seemed like the normal kind of natural ebb and flow, but you're starting to see dollar amounts on books that used to be relatively affordable that are just insane now, and it's eye-popping. So yeah, I mean, I think that knowing what to buy is never really that hard, but knowing how much to pay in this market is definitely a big deal.
Now, Pele, I know your store specializes in back issues. You have a very nice personal collection yourself, so you're always looking for these comics, and you're moving them. You're churning them out of your store. Mm-hmm. I imagine you've been very interested in this volatility, what's causing it, and you have tried to diagnose at least some of the issues. What the hell is going on now?
Oh, it's a manifold issue. There's lots of things that are contributing to this. It was kind of like a perfect storm, I guess. You had the issues involving, you know, all the government money that went out. You had crypto market going insane again, putting a lot of, you know, cash into people's pockets who don't normally have a lot of cash. And comic fans getting access to thousands, if not millions of dollars causes a lot of fuss in the market. And it's not just the comic fans too. It's other collectibles, people from other collectible markets, card collectors, sports card collectors, you know, coins, trading card collectors, stamps. I've got a guy now that's a stamp collector that's coming in and buying like shitloads of back issues now because he's really gotten into the market. And it's wild. It really is. It's like the Wild West all over again as far as for comic books. And the values change daily, hourly on some issues. And
so, do these card collectors, do they have any idea what they're looking at, and like what the difference is, and what's valuable and what's not?
No. They know the characters. They know the characters involved, and then they get a good idea of, okay, well, I should get something like this. I should get this comic, and because it's the first appearance of this character, and it's graded at this, and they kind of know what they got. They have a good idea what grading is because they have their own grading services through Beckett and different services there. And then that's where they kind of run into a problem, because they see scarcity differently than comic book collectors see scarcity. You've got 20,000, 25,000 of a particular card that's graded. That's tiny. In the collectible card world, that's like, very, very scarce. If you've got 25,000 of this particular Fleer, of this year and this press, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, that's worth $4,500. That's worth $6,000. And they look at our census numbers in comics, and first appearance, Tales of Suspense number 52, first appearance of Black Widow. It's a very desirable back issue right now. The movie's coming up, and there are 2,500 of them in total that are graded across all the grading services in the regular grade. 2,500. And they go, oh my God, this doesn't exist. It's almost non-existent. This is crazy. And they see the values. Well, 6.0 was selling for $700 about a year and a half ago. Now it's selling for about $2,000. And it's continuing to climb up because, their idea of scarcity is not the same as our idea of scarcity. So it's causing the comic collectors are going, what the hell? This comic, if you got the book, you're happy. If you don't have the book yet, and a lot of, collectors kind of, we're kind of procrastinators, we all hold off a little bit and we keep looking for the best deal. And if you waited on books, you're in trouble, and you may not see them at a great deal again. And
so we have non-discerning customers coming into a market that they're not completely aware of, thinking about it in terms of another market where the scarcity values are different, and it's driving up the prices and causing fluctuations in the market. Yul, in your experience, like, are the price guides even correct? Are they even close to being correct right now? Can you even use those services?
The owner of Comic Relief, Rory Root, told me it's a guide. That's all it is. And when they started putting the CGC numbers up there, a near mint is a 9.2 or a near mint minus, or whatever they're calling it. Mm-hmm. And they don't have 9.4 what that would be worth, or 9.6. So it's anybody's guess, and it's pretty much depending on what eBay sales go for and what CGC slab books, how they record what the prices are, and you can look at the GP analysis. So I don't know, man. This is like some crazy stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah, Go Collect.
I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah, Go Collect has a really good service.
Oh yeah, Go Collect, yeah.
But they're 2 to 3 weeks off. They aren't putting like newly, because people back out of deals. Weird things happen, so they wait until the sale is completed and both parties have settled down and stuff like that before they record it. Well, the problem is that 2 to 3 weeks now might as well be a year. It might as well be 2 years.
It needs to be near real-time services.
Yeah, and they do have that. GPA has that, but again, you run into the problem of, what if somebody backed out on the deal? What if somebody, there's no telling what might have happened. Is it accurate? Is it somebody trying to pump up the market? All the problems that happened in the card market before are now happening in the comic book market. And manipulation is a very real thing. And when you get somebody in you get into a comic collecting which has such tight numbers of what's available in the market, and somebody has manipulated the value on an issue, with 2 sales, it might as well be gospel at that point that that's what that comic is worth, and then everything takes off from there. And you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars difference, so people, get a little nervous, as you can understand.
Absolutely. So, Doc, we know that eBay has changed up their formatting as far as searching for comic books to bid on in their auction site. You can no longer search them by like Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and everything like that. Has that created even more confusion where you're actually trying to find maybe the current sales on a character first appearance or a key issue that you've been looking for? Like, has it made it even more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, eBay was okay. It's always been kind of okay for finding stuff that you're looking for. But a lot of times you're skimming through a lot of shit that you don't care about to find the book that you actually are caring about. Especially with the poor way that people name their auctions or their whatever, their listings. I feel like there needs to be a little more standardized naming for it if eBay is going to start messing around with the formatting for filtering, because it was never good to begin with, and it's getting worse now. So you're going to have, between people that are not used to comics getting into the comic market, investors that are getting into the comic market for a fixed asset to put money into, or just people that have a bunch of old comics sitting at home and haven't been in the collecting sphere in a decade, that are trying to sell their books now because they see that prices are getting crazy. It's making it chaotic. There's been a lot of chaos in the past 2 years now. I mean, just in the overall world, and this is definitely not helping. I mean, there's no order to this. I mean, we saw the comic. What happened when the card and the coin and the stamp people got into comics in 1991, and this is feeling like, I already watched this movie.
And now they've got even more money.
Yeah. So Paley, with something like eBay, and we'll kind of get into the money, it was never designed to be a place where you could go and find the numbers of values for comic books. And it almost feels like a lot of people are using that to gauge the pricing. For someone that owns a store that specializes in this, do you go by that as gospel, or are you using another a set of parameters to define your prices?
eBay is one arrow in the quiver. Kind of got to get a general idea, but I also look at Heritage. I also look at Comic Link, Shortbox, stuff like that. There's a lot of different services out there, and you kind of get a general idea. But you got to remember too, they charge fees and stuff like that. And if you can undercut that, so you can undercut it by 10% from eBay pricing and make the same profit. And then when you've talked about, exchanging money with, different services, payment services or whatever like that might be involved. So you can undercut eBay, make the same amount of profit on it, and attract more customers. So you got to kind of keep that in mind as well. If something sells for $2,400, you can sell it for $2,200, and you'll get that customer where they won't buy it on eBay.
And Pele, I know another thing that you are doing, you're always scouring the market for big collections that are coming out there, whether it be a comic shop is closing down, so you're going to have this big collection of back issues on the market with a lot of undesirable stuff. It's going to have a lot of stuff that you're interested in, or your customers are potentially going to be interested in. Maybe there's big private collections. Have you seen the prices popping on those as well?
Yeah. One interesting thing, I buy a lot of stores, unfortunately, have kind of gone under, and one of the things they do to help pay off some of their debt that they've accrued is to sell off their inventory. And boy, that's changed. Now, beforehand, go in, if comic book stores sell their inventory, maybe 10, 15 grand, smaller shop, something like that. you could pay 40, 50 cents on the dollar because they really need that cash. And you really don't want to pay that much more because it takes time for you to sell those books. You got to sort it. You've got to organize it. You've got to get things graded. You've got to do all these other kind of things. So yeah, there's a lot involved in that. And it's going to take time just to move those comics and get your money back. Now, they're hanging pretty close to current market value and they want a lot higher. And, this last shop that I went and helped out like that, I was able to work with them on part of the inventory, and the rest of it I was like, no, I'm not interested. And that modern stuff, we don't really do well with a lot of the modern stuff. Variant covers, this variant's worth $250 according to some value somewhere. I'll never would be able to sell it for that. So no, I'm not interested. And vintage stuff, yes. And so it does create, it's certainly a seller's market out there for the vintage, but it's still pretty much a buyer's market on some of the modern, especially variants and stuff like that. So
sorry.
I'm hearing that there's some pricing variations that we're seeing with old vintage newsstand comics versus their direct market counterparts. Depending on the era, one of them is going to be much more valuable than the other. Have you been seeing that with your customers, like looking for, maybe I want the newsstand variant of this one, which I know is much rarer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely know of the people that are looking for that type of thing. I know it's out there, and I don't really go too crazy on it, but if it was something that stood out to me and it was a newsstand book from that time, I'd paid special attention to it. Normally I'm just trying to get the stuff out there and try and build the business, and it's kind of like what Pele is saying. You don't want to charge eBay prices for stuff because not only are you trying to sell that book in your store at that time, you're trying to get a customer to come back again. And, there's this like really tricky pricing that you have, there's always buyer's and seller's remorse, no matter who you are. Oh, I sold that thing way too cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah, there definitely is a class of people out there that are like, I got to have all white pages and I got to have a newsstand edition of this book, and maybe Doc or Pele can talk about the differences of the age of the newsstand books. But obviously, if you're looking for a newsstand book that was on 7-Eleven or some spinner rack at a liquor store, some kid with a Twinkie is probably bending the books over, and it's really hard to find really good condition comic books from the newsstands, probably like in the 70s or 80s, right, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, the 90s.
Or even the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, because 90s newsstands are what's really going crazy. The early aughts in the 90s, where there was 1 every 20 comics was a newsstand. Go ahead, Doc. You were going to say something about that.
Well, on this subject, I this is a much more modern, issue that's come up. That there's a distinction that didn't really exist before for a long time. Nobody particularly cared if it was the direct market or the newsstand, unless it was a key. And I think that part of the reason why you're starting to see, in the 80s and 90s, you started getting the distinction between the regular version and the British pence versions of silver and Bronze Age stuff, where the pence stuff was worth less. And even today, you'll still see the pence stuff selling for less. But I feel like in the more recent years, especially as some of the collecting base, like myself, has gotten older, we're getting closer and closer, if not completely done, with filling out our collection. And now we're like, okay, we have that compulsion, but we don't want to start a new collection. We're like, well, how can I make my collection that's complete more complete? And then we start looking for distinctions. We do.
Price variance is definitely one of them.
Oh man.
Price variance, like the 25 and 30 cent ones and the 30 and 35 cent ones. Oh yeah, those started getting big. But newsstand and direct market are a little easier to distinguish. Oftentimes it's all you got to do. You don't have to flip the book open. You can look at the cover, and if it's a barcode, it's newsstand, and if it's the head of Spider-Man or Captain America or whatever, it's direct market. And that's something that people only recently started really getting into, and I think it's because they're looking for a reason to continue collecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. People also noticed that direct market comics from the 70s are really scarce because there weren't a whole lot of comic book shops. There weren't a lot of shops that specialized in periodicals. So, if you could find one of those, you would see the regular comic would look like, comic book cover, barcode on the front, but it's got a line, not a drawn line. It's got an actual printed line across the barcode, which means it was a direct issue comic. And those are even more scarce than the newsstands of the 90s and aughts in a lot of cases, and those are getting to be extremely desirable.
And as us nerds feel the compulsion to continue our collecting and to distinguish more, we naturally kind of create this scarcity where we start recognizing the difference in rarity and availability between early newsstand being very abundant and early direct market being very rare, and then the opposite in the 90s and 2000s. And as a result, it has a natural fallout of causing the more rare thing to get more expensive.
Everybody wants to have the best trophy. You're like, we have the same one. Mine's way more rare. There's 500 in existence. You've got one that's 5,000.
And to make it worse,
going to do that.
CGC doesn't even distinguish between them most of the time. On almost any comic, they just have the comic on the label. It's just the comic. The details about the comic don't tell you whether it's newsstand or direct.
Give it time. As honestly as that becomes a more common thing for people to distinguish in the collector's market, CGC will adapt and they'll start distinguishing.
Yeah, CBCS has always done that pretty much from the beginning. They've told you whether it's direct or newsstand, and they differentiate on their senses, but CGC hasn't done that. So, we don't really know how, that's another thing. We don't know how many of a particular direct or newsstand copy of a book are out there because they've not distinguished it. So you don't know how rare these books are. You've only got it's about 1 in 20 or, it's maybe 1 in 10. We're not sure. So
Pele, we're seeing these fluctuations in the market. It's caused by, there's an influx of money out there. There's some inflation things happening, but we have new collectors coming into the market from other collecting hobbies where they want to come in and start speculating on some of these old key issues in comic books. We're having some confusion. They don't know exactly what they're looking at all the time, but we're also having the comic book collectors themselves starting to distinguish the value of their comics by kind of making them even more rare, by differentiating them even more. And we're getting all these fluctuations. In your opinion, just as a normal person that maybe has a couple $100 to spend, if they're looking for an area of exploitation, a place to go and invest their money, and that where they can get some cool comics that maybe one day will get a good return, are there any areas that they should be looking at right now?
The Bronze Age is getting a little crazy and hairy. That's unless you just want, common issues, non-keys, that's kind of priced out already right now. The Copper Age, I would say, because you get some really nice, amazing Spider-Mans, even, you're not like 300 or any of the McFarlanes, but, there's a lot of good Spider-Man issues, X-Men, from the Copper Age. That's from, the early 90s, 1989 up till about 2000. It's when comics are still printed on newsprint. They hadn't gone quite to glossy paper yet. And those are great because, one, you've got it's newsprint. There's a little bit more issues involving, white pages or non-white. You could do your searching in there. And condition is very sensitive with them still because it's newsprint. They're a lot more fragile in a lot of ways. And they're a great era of comics. You had the emerging artists. You had great storylines during those times. And one of the things that benefits with that is high print numbers. So you're going to be able to get in at a good price because there's just a lot more of them out there. And that's a great place to start. I mean, is that Amazing Spider-Man that you buy for $3 or $4 going to be worth $1,000 one day? No, it's not. But it could be worth 20 or 30. Especially in a nice condition. So near mint condition, you never know. 30 to 40 years from now, those books are going to be what Bronze Age is today. So it's definitely a great era to get in to start buying and collecting.
Do you have any kind of advice for people looking at the market right now? Or you say sit it out? Or you say take your shots, but be strategic about it? What are your thoughts on the market?
I guess it really depends on what you're looking to do as a collector. Like you said, there's a lot of people from outside of comics getting into collecting. There's a lot of people out there right now, and they have YouTube channels that are new to the game, and they're schooling us old timers like crazy. They have all the keys I've ever maybe thought about having, and they did it by trading up and trading from something, and getting something when it was hot and taking advantage of the situation. You can actually, if we're not talking about key issues, you could probably go and get a lot of that Silver Age stuff also, Pele. It's expensive, but lower grade. You can go to conventions a lot of times and you'll see Silver Age comics at half off. A book that should normally be $90 is like $40 and stuff like that, because it doesn't move. Everybody wants the key. I want the first Brainiac. I want this first Supergirl, that type of stuff. It's all the B-side issues that are out there that fill your collection. And really, personally, for me, if you're looking to collect comic books, having 10, 20, 30 issues in a row in as close to immaculate condition as possible, not slabbed, that's a collection that I drool over personally.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff out there. Pardon me?
Sorry. Speaking about unslabbed,
please, yeah.
People are noticing that unslabbed comics, raw comics, are selling for close to what slab comics were selling for.
Definitely, there's dealers that sell them for that too.
And people are like, "What the hell? What's going on?" And a lot of it is that the demand is so high on a lot of issues that people are looking. Oh, the slab copy of this is selling for $500. Well, I'll give you this definitely looks like a 6.0. I'll give you $450 for it. Those dealers would be crazy not to sell it, and they're taking advantage of it too because they're like, I don't even have to send it in to be graded. I can get it near a graded price for.
Don't have to take the risk.
Yeah, and you are taking a risk because if that book has, some type of defect that you're not seeing, and you get it back from being graded, you catch a brick, and you're screwed. It's like, or it's restored. Somebody went in and did a little color touch on it and you didn't even notice. There's a lot of risks involved in that, and people that are doing that, most of the time, if they know what they're looking at, they can get away with it. They're going to be okay. But every once in a while, you're going to get that purple label back from CGC, and you're going to go, "Oh shit, what?" And you're just out.
Yeah, you are, and it's
out.
Worthless.
Virtually worthless.
It's not worthless, but it's worthless.
Worthless. They're worth a lot less.
So we're kind of coming up here to the end. Doc, do you have any final words about the volatility in the market and the way that you're seeing it and playing it?
Well, I think we've hit on a lot of them with a lot of the new money, the government money, the everything else. But I think one thing that we didn't take into account was, Yule started off by talking about how, as a result of this, he had to create an online store recently. I think you're seeing a lot of other stores doing the same as a result of this pandemic that we're coming out of now. So now you have a lot. The market is so much bigger. You're not just
bigger
going,
inventory of what's available.
Yes, there's better places to search for things. So books are getting churned a little faster, and as a result, you're kind of growing you're inflating the value as a result, because now there's there used to be 10 major places that you could basically buy comics from online. Now there's still those 10, but there's also another couple hundred that have sprung up that are small store inventory, where they're not just selling on eBay, they're using their own sales platform. And that's kind of giving an illusion that even those that were using eBay before and now are on their own platform, that still gives the illusion in the market that there is more marketplace. There's a growing marketplace.
And those collectors are going crazy now because they're seeing prices that are making it too attractive for them not to sell.
There are. So
people are getting to their collections all of a sudden.
They're like, oh, I would never sell such and such. You mean it's worth $50,000?
Yeah.
Oh, let me go dig that up.
Yeah, there's books that I bought that I'm like, okay, this is never leaving my collection for a long time, and now I'm sitting there going like, well, maybe it will. Like, I don't know. I could put an addition on my house for this.
Yeah, but you know what though? There was like the longest time when I'm like, oh, I'll just go and get that Spider-Man 121, 122 again. Oh, I'll go get that, whatever that comic might be, like the Byrne run of X-Men.
Yeah.
If you're saying that now,
good luck.
You're going to really be paying,
especially
a lot of
in
money.
high grade. Good Lord, man. God, even like Dazzler 130 of X-Men, if that book was everywhere, I mean, you could go to a comic show and see 100 copies of it in high grade, and people are begging people to buy it for $50. And now it's like near mint, $500, and you're just looking at what?
I think I got 5 of them.
Yeah, I've got
excellent.
several of them. I've got a 9.8 CGC 9.8. I looked at it the other day, $2,800. I'm like, good God,
98, man.
And people are just, and it was everywhere. It was ubiquitous, and
it's nuts. It's nuts.
That's the thing. A lot of those comics are out there. Pele, you said behind the scenes one day you knew someone that had like a box full of Hulk 181s or something like that. They're out there.
Yeah, they are. They are. And the forecast that I've got is that it's going to keep going up. The market's going to keep climbing. And but there is going to be a soft point. And we'll let you all know when that's starting to happen. But there's going to be a point where it's going to cool off. It's got to. The market just can't keep overheating like this forever. There's going to be a soft point, but it's not going to ever be like it was before, I don't think. I don't see it ever being quite like it was before. The prices have changed too much, and there's too many people that have entered now. And there's going to be a soft point, and then it's going to heat up again, and prices are going to go from there onward. And next time it softens up, if there's books out there that you really want, you're going to pull the trigger. Yeah.
So, guys, I do want to say thank you all for joining me. Just talk about some of the volatility. What are some of the factors in there? How can you protect yourself? And kind of what to look out for. We will talk about comic collecting again, I'm certain, in the near future, because it's a hot item and things are spiraling out of control, perhaps.
Yeah, it's wild.